Today, we're going to be upgrading the firmware on this printer. Now, there's two steps to the firmware upgrade. You have to upgrade the firmware in the main board inside of the printer, and then you also have to upgrade the firmware on their touchscreen. So I'm going to show you how to do both. It's fairly simple, so let's get right to it. All right, so what you want to do first before you start this process is to go to elegoo.com, and then once you're on their webpage, you click on support, and then you'll see 3D printing files download. So you want to click on this, and then you want to select your printer from the side here. So we're going to pick Neptune 3 Plus, and it basically just filters out all of the stuff on the page. And then we're going to click on firmware and then click to download. Now what this does is it brings you to GitHub. And if you haven't been on GitHub before, basically what you want to do is you want to click on code and then you want to click on download zip. Now this is going to download the Neptune 3 Pro Plus and Max firmware to your computer. So open up that zip file, and there are instructions within that zip file. So once your SD card is plugged into your computer, you can go to it here. Now, what you want to do is you want to right-click on, and you want to make sure, just for the firmware upgrade, that this is formatted correctly. So if you right-click on your USB drive, so I'm using a USB to SD adapter, all you want to do is click Format. File system has to be FAT32, and your allocation size has to be 4096 bytes. Then you just click Start. It's going to say, hey, we're erasing all the data on this card. Just hit OK. Format complete. Once that is done, you want to go to that zip file that you downloaded and go to board firmware, and then you're going to pick your printer in here. So this firmware that we downloaded works for the Neptune 3 Pro, the Plus, which we're working on, and also the Max. So we're going to go to Plus, and then we're going to click on the 1.2.5 1B, and then we're going to right click on this. We're going to do copy. Or you can just simply drag it over to here too and just do copy to USB drive D. All right, now we're gonna go up a couple levels, and then we also wanna go over to screen firmware. So we're gonna open that up. We're gonna go to V1.4.2, and then we're gonna drag that file also over to our USB drive. Okay, now if we click on there, you'll see that we have a bin and a TFT file in here. All right, so our first step is going to be to update the firmware on the screen. Now, we can just unplug it from here. You just squeeze this little connector here and pull the wire out. All right, now we have our SD card with the firmware that we loaded onto it. We're gonna set that to the side. And if you flip the screen over on the back, there are 4 Allen screws. And you're gonna need one of your small Allen wrenches from the toolkit that came with the printer. And we'll just set them to the side to make sure we don't lose them. And then so we don't scratch the screen, we're gonna set it on one of these lint-free cloths. Gently take the back cover off, and then within the screen, you'll see that there is a slot for a micro SD card. You wanna slide your memory card into that slot. We're just gonna temporarily put the back on here, and that's gonna keep this connection port here from falling out, because if you don't put the back on and you go to plug it in, this thing just moves all over the place. We don't wanna damage or rip the wires out, so I'm just gonna set this on, and that's just gonna hold it in place. Okay, and what we wanna do is we wanna plug our connector back in to the screen. And then we're gonna simply power up the printer. All right, you'll see SD card update, and it's writing data. Now you wanna make sure you don't power this down while this is happening. All right, and you'll see update success instead of successful. That's funny. But that's all there is to updating the screen. All right, so all we wanna do now is power off the printer once more. We'll pull our connector out, and then we're gonna remove the SD card from the screen. Okay, and since we didn't put the screws back in, we can just remove the back cover once more. And you wanna be real gentle. You can kinda just stick like your fingernail in here and wiggle that card out. And that's all there is to updating the screen. Now we're gonna update the printer next. All right, so all we're gonna do is we're gonna take that same card that we loaded the firmware on, since we loaded the firmware for the main board and the screen, we're gonna stick that in our printer, and then we're gonna power the printer on. But you'll see that it's booting. Now we're gonna let this boot, and you'll see that it says update firmware right now. All right, now we can go into our settings, and we can click about machine, and you'll see that the firmware version for the screen is 1.4.2. The firmware version for the printer is 1.2.5.1b. All right, and then once you do this firmware update, it actually clears all of the level data on your printer that you had previously set. So you're gonna have to manually retram the bed and go through and do the automatic leveling again. All right, guys, and that wraps it up for today's video. If you watched my video and updated your firmware, let me know how you made out. If you have any questions, drop them down in the comments below. Make sure to hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button if you're not subscribed already. I have new stuff coming out weekly, not just 3D printing, but also DIY stuff. And also check out my buddy Try Not to Break Anything's page. He has some really cool videos on the Bamboo Labs X1 Carbon. So if you have that printer, be sure to check it out. Some really good content. And he also has some really cool projects that he's working on. Until next time, thanks for watching.